is I can tell you three things to make your decision because it is your decision and you're going to need to decide quickly. And I flash back to my body in the bed that's still bleeding out and has no soul essence. I was like, oh, I understand. So he says, number one, I can tell you if you choose to go back, you will have a successful surgery tomorrow and you will fully regain your health. That just felt like the weight of the world off my shoulders. That was huge to hear that. And he continued, he said, number two, your baby will be born healthy. This is also huge.
Yeah.
I was only 10 weeks pregnant when this started, and to have gone through this level of medical complications, I was very, very concerned. I also felt I had just known instinctively that it was going to be a really special child. My husband and I so wanted another child, and I really felt it was my last opportunity, based on, what had gone on with all the excitement, OB and GYN wise. So this is also huge to hear there's going to be another healthy baby. So now I'm starting to teeter. I'm like, oh gosh, do I go back? Is that what I'm meant to do? I want to do the right thing. And number three,
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Maria Felipe TV. I am so grateful and thankful for yet another episode. And today, you all know I'm a big fan of NDEs. I've had plenty of them on the podcast and on my YouTube channel. And my dear German, my assistant, found this incredible spiritual teacher. She's an author, Wendy Williams. She is a past life energy healer who helps people release emotional and physical pain, anxiety, and energetic blockages. In 1997, while pregnant, Wendy had two near death experiences, which we'll be talking about today. One, an artery burst while she was home alone, and another the night before surgery. During these experiences, she met her angels for the first time. I can hardly wait, Wendy, to find this out here. She felt deep peace beyond the physical world and received profound spiritual insights. These awakenings led her to explore past life regression therapy, transforming her life and inspiring her to help others and heal. And that's exactly why she's here. This channel is about healing, it's about helping others awaken to remember they've never left the mind of love. And for all of you that know, I love the Course in Miracles. And I think that the NDEs have such a relation to what the Course is teaching. So I'm excited to dive in with Wendy and see how both of these teachings intermingle. They intermingle, Wendy. Welcome.
oh, thank you so much for having me as your guest, Maria. I love what you're doing, and thanks for having me here.
Thanks, Wendy. So let's start with so what do you remember from your NDs? And you can tell us a little bit about how that happened, and then we can get
Sure.
into how that helped you awaken.
Absolutely. So what happened was it was August of 1997, and I was newly pregnant. My husband and I were very excited because there had been years of infertility as well as two ectopic pregnancies, and we did have an 18-month-old toddler. So we are just very over the moon to have had that first visit with the OB and hear that it was a healthy uterine pregnancy, was what it looked like from that first visit. So the day of the first NDE, I was working at home. I was alone. My husband was at work with one car, and our nanny was at the park with our toddler with the other car. And Maria, I just didn't feel right that day. I kept having this recurring, very vivid dream, which was really unusual for me. And it was the same dream every time, and I was having it multiple times a week. And what I would see was this terrible storm out at sea, and I would see a big sailing vessel, and there was all this ripping and tearing, like the winches and the cleats would all come off, and the masts would always break in two, and the ship would go down. And it doesn't take a master dream interpreter to, our subconscious, our unconscious can be trying to tell us, pay attention. There's an issue here. So be ready because your ship's going to go down. And what happened was, as I said, I didn't feel right. All of a sudden, I kept trying to focus and, work on the phone and the computer. And all of a sudden, I had this awful feeling of impending doom. And I've
Oh my
never had
gosh.
feeling before. So I ran into the bathroom thinking, I'm going to be sick. I don't know what's wrong. There's something terribly wrong. And when I got into the bathroom, I looked down at my abdomen in surprise because it felt like someone literally stuck a knife in me and it felt like an organ burst. And I remember crying out to God for help, particularly because I knew I was home alone, and I passed out on the floor. And I
Wow.
only came to because there was this insistent male voice, and he kept saying so urgently, Wendy, Wendy, you've got to wake up now, or you're going to go home. You've got to wake up and call for help. So I open my eyes and I'm disoriented because I'm laying on my side on the floor. And Maria, all I could see in the primary bathroom with me was so much light because there
Oh
were
my gosh.
4 or 5 angels,
Oh,
and they were so big, and they were floating a few inches off the floor, and there was just so much love and compassion and forgiveness coming from them. And he repeated the message. And I told him, I understand, because I knew exactly what he meant, that I was going to die if I didn't get help. And I told him, I understand, but I can't walk. I can't get to the phone because this was 1997. So we didn't have, cell phones,
yes.
glued in our back pocket or glued in our hand. I had to get to a landline. And his answer to me was very telling. And I've since learned angels speak on multiple levels. What they say just has so many different, so much nuance and so many meanings to it. And he said, you just have to be willing to try. So I managed to get up on my hands and knees. And I mean, my mind was just being blown at this point. It's like, oh my gosh, angels are real. They're here. They're helping me. I can't believe this. This is amazing. And at that point, when I got up on my hands and knees, it was like being gently moved, just gently flown the short distance to get to that phone on the nightstand next to the bed. So I reached up and managed to grab it because I was still on the floor, just clutching my abdomen. And I managed to grab it. And I did have a brief thought, who do I call? He didn't say who to call. He just said call for help. And I was a 36-year-old healthy woman. I'd never called 911 in my life, so that didn't even enter my mind.
Yeah.
The perfect time to call 911. But instead, I chose to call my husband at work because I knew he worked 5 minutes from home. And I thought, oh, if I can just get him on the phone. So miracles continued because I did get him on the phone immediately. I have never reached him at work right away like that. So clearly I was getting assistance. And I give him a lot of credit because all I said to him was, I need you to drive me to the hospital now. Can you take me to the hospital now? And all he said was, on my way. And I heard him slam the phone down. So I had just enough time to call the OB office. I told them what had happened and that my abdomen was distending and getting bigger and bigger, which I didn't understand why that was happening. And I told them that the pain was just excruciating. And I told him my husband was on his way, and they said, perfect. He's going to get you here faster than 911 at this point. So when you get here, don't park your car. We're going to be waiting for you curbside with a wheelchair because we don't want you walking. So that's exactly what happened. So we're at the hospital 10 minutes later, and my OB office, fortunately, is located right at the hospital, which I think was also very important for me. So I get whisked up into their office and they help me up on the ultrasound table to get a visual, get some imaging on what's happening. And I'm looking at the screen and I'm puzzled because I'd had several ultrasounds before. I mean, it's amazing how much you can see. And all I could see was like black, and it was like kind of moving a little bit. And so I looked at the ultrasonographer. I'm like, is your machine working right? I don't understand what we're looking at. And her response was, I'll be right back. I'm going to get the doctor. So I'm looking at my husband like, I don't know what's going on, but that's not good. So
Yeah.
she's back very quickly with the doctor, and he's also got a certified nurse midwife with him. And I did kind of look around and chuckle at that moment because we've now got like five people like jammed into this tiny room that's meant for two people. So he adjusts the machine and he knows exactly what's going on. And he tells me as kindly as he can, but very firmly, he says, Wendy, you've got a major abdominal bleed. I can't visualize where it's coming from because the view is blocked because that's what you're seeing on the screen is all blood loss. It's not within it's not where it should be in your body. It's not in your veins and your capillaries. It's just being lost somewhere and I don't know why. We need to admit you to the hospital right now. So someone ran and got a stretcher because they didn't want me sitting upright in the wheelchair because we needed to get this bleeding to stop. And I get lifted from the gurney into the hospital bed. There's several nurses there. I've got the doctor, my husband. There's just a lot. There's a lot going on. And so the doctor says, okay, we need to start transfusing. Let's order blood. Do you know your blood type? I said, absolutely. Everyone should know their blood type. I said, it's A negative. So one of the nurses goes out to the nursing station to call the Puget Sound Blood Bank. Because at the time I was living in Seattle, Central Blood Bank to not be wasting this precious resource. And she comes back in a few minutes later, not looking happy. And to everyone's surprise, she says, I can't get blood for her because evidently there was a train collision 2 or 3 days ago and it used up all the A negative blood supply. So she's going to have to call around to different big hospitals and try and borrow units. So she goes off to do that. There's a brief discussion of should I be taken directly to surgery, but we don't know what we're operating on. I'm pregnant. We don't have blood. So the decision was made to wait and watch, which I was very comfortable with. I worked in healthcare. I knew this hospital very well. I'd had both my ectopic pregnancy surgeries there, as well as delivered my daughter and had my infertility work there. And I knew they delivered about 5,000 babies a year, which meant there was a deep infrastructure for OB emergencies too. So we made the decision I wasn't going to be transferred downtown and we weren't going to rush into surgery. So I'm staying in the bed, can't get up even to go to the bathroom, and we're doing a wait and watch. I'm being very well attended. They did get blood about 6 hours later and start transfusing me, but I can see we're going through it at an alarming rate, Maria. And also, I'm just still in so much pain. So I'm just blowing through the little bit of Demerol that they tried to give me. I'm on morphine and I'm
Wow.
just horrified because, transfusions, morphine, this is not what you want in your first trimester. You
And
don't want birth.
everything's going so fast too, and you're
Exactly.
in pain. I think the pain is the hardest part because you can't really function, with that pain in your body.
Exactly. Really couldn't function well. I could feel myself walking between worlds, is the best way I could describe it, like making the decision to stay or to go. And what alarmed me the most about that was I didn't really care. That is so not my personality. I've always been, just such enthusiastic and such a fighter. And if plan A doesn't work, well, we got all the way through to plan Z and we'll figure it out and, do what we need to do. And I just wasn't in that place because it's just that life force is just ebbing away. So on day
It
three,
sounds, Wendy, like a sense of trust. You
I
know,
think,
like
yes,
trusting, like just trusting that it's just fine. Like there's no judgment on it, I feel is what I'm sensing from you.
that's very fair. That's a really good observation. Yes, that's fair to say. So on day three, my physician lets me know based on my hemoglobin, or my hematocrit rather. He said, Wendy, you probably know this, but you're officially bleeding out at this point because your hematocrit has dropped just so dangerously low, and we can't transfuse you quickly enough because you just lose it, faster than we can pump it in. We've got to do surgery. It's really our only option at this point. So will you please agree to surgery? So I did. And the surgery was going to be the next morning. I was going to be the first case. It was going to be my OB and one of his partners. So I felt good about that, Maria. I'd, made this really difficult decision, and I knew it was the right one. And I'm trying to relax in my hospital room that night after dinner. And I was by myself, and I was just trying to visualize the best positive outcome the next day with that surgery. The minute I had that thought, I popped right out of my body. I left my body. Evidently, that was the best possible outcome at that moment. And I remember looking back over my left shoulder and looking at myself in the bed and kind of critiquing myself. And I just felt better. I didn't have pain. My sense of humor was coming back. And I'm like, oh, wow, look at her. She's a hot mess. Couldn't they have at least given her a hairbrush? It's been like 3+ days
Yeah.
in bed, and there's been no mirror or hairbrush or comb. So I look like the wild woman of Borneo. And also, I'm looking at myself going, wow, she's really in a bad way. She's whiter than a ghost. She's whiter than the sheets. She is bleeding out. And then I'm like, wait a minute, why am I referring to myself in the third person? And why do I feel so dispassionate about that? And I'm like, oh, I'm back in soul form. I feel fantastic. And I could differentiate, okay, that's my body in the bed. Yes, the body is very important. It's our beautiful housing for our soul, but it's not who we are. We're souls, and our souls are eternal.
Wow.
So I look one more time at myself as Wendy in the bed and go, she's fine. Very blasé, not fine at all. But from the soul perspective, absolutely fine. Because all I wanted to do, what had my interest now that I looked at myself and understood the difference between the body and the soul so clearly, all I wanted to do was follow the white light, because there was like this triangle of white light coming down from the ceiling of my hospital room. And I was so excited, and it had this like gentle magnetic pull to it. And I just couldn't wait to follow it. So it's exactly what I did after announcing I was fine in the bed. And I just start following it, and I go up and up and up. I go pop right out of the top of the hospital building. I'm looking around, and I'm going faster and faster, feeling better and better and more like myself. I'm not so scared. I'm not in pain anymore. And I'm going back home. And I feel great about that. But all of a sudden, I just stutter to a stop, and it feels terrible. I don't know if you've ever run out of gas. It's like that horrible feeling like, oh no. And I was just completely out of energy. And I remember thinking, oh, don't make me walk through one of those long tunnels. I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to get home. I need help. And the minute I had that thought, this beautiful escalator dropped in. It was pristine. There's no one else on it, so much light from it. And I just plopped myself on it. I'm like, oh, yay, there's my ride home. And in plopping myself on it, I plopped over the handrail on the right side. And that made me realize I knew my soul, just instinctively. I knew it should have been like a beach ball of like this like sparkly, moving, excited energy is what my soul should have been like. And instead, I'm like flatter than a pancake, like just hanging over the rail. But it's like, that's okay. Got my ride home. and the escalator just goes up and up and up. And the minute I get to the top of the escalator, I am so thrilled, excited, relieved, just so happy because I get this tremendous group hug from my soul family. And there were 18 or 20 of them there waiting for me. Clearly, they knew I was coming. And I could see the same 4 or 5 angels standing right behind them because the angels were bigger. There's more light from them, and there's just more love coming from them. You can tell the difference. So everyone's giving me this huge group hug. I could have stayed there forever because it was unconditional love.
Wow.
And I was home and there was no judgment. And it just felt amazing. It made me realize we need to love ourselves more, and we need to forgive ourselves. We need to forgive others. We need to let go of the judgment. They don't amount to a hill of beans. They just don't make any sense. It's not what life is about, but we forget that once we get here and we get in a human body and we're acting out these amazing experiences and play runs, so to speak. We're back in school. But I'm just getting this hug. It's like, oh, there's nothing more that I need. And then the same male angel that had been speaking in my bathroom, and I immediately recognized him now that I was home at a higher vibration. It was Archangel Michael. And he said, welcome home. We're so glad you're here. You've done nothing wrong. You're welcome to stay. And I'm like, welcome to stay? Of course I'm staying. Who are you kidding? This hug.
Wow.
So at that point, he kind of like just waves to everybody and directs them to, step back so I can listen to him better. And what he continues and says, I can tell you 3 things to make your decision because it is your decision and you're going to need to decide quickly. And I flash back to my body in the bed that's still bleeding out and has no soul essence. I was like, oh, I understand. So he says, number one, I can tell you if you choose to go back, you will have a successful surgery tomorrow and you will fully regain your health. That just felt like the weight of the world off my shoulders. That was huge to hear that. And he continued, he said, number two, your baby will be born healthy. This is also huge.
Yeah.
I was only 10 weeks pregnant when this started, and to have gone through this level of medical complications, I was very, very concerned. I also felt I had just known instinctively that it was going to be a really special child. My husband and I so wanted another child, and I really felt it was my last opportunity, based on what had gone on with all the excitement, OB and GYN wise. So this is also huge to hear there's going to be another healthy baby. So now I'm starting to teeter. I'm like, oh gosh, do I go back? Is that what I'm meant to do? I want to do the right thing. And number three was the kicker. And he told me, if you do choose to go back, your life will be very difficult, likely for many years, because you're not living your path. You're not living your purpose. Oh, I felt horrible. I just like shrank down even further. I was so just mortified. No one wants to hear they're not living their purpose. So I gather myself back up and I look at him, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's terrible. I said, please tell me, what should I be doing? What should I be doing more of? What should I be doing differently? What should I not be doing? What do I let go of? I want to live my purpose. What's my purpose? And he just gently shook his head. So it's like, oh boy, he's not chatty Cathy on this topic. Nothing.
Oh,
So I start looking around. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I've got my whole soul family here. I've got everyone with me that I know and love the best. There's got to be someone that's going to give me some information. So I start going around from person to person to person and like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? What do you know? Give me a hint. Tell me. What do you think? And I'm trying to get information. and no one will tell me. So I'm just deflating further and further. Like, how do I go back if I don't know what the heck I'm doing? And everyone just sees me because, of course, you're at home, and there's this amazing telepathy. There's no poor communication, missed communications. It's just everyone knows what everyone is feeling, and they just see me just getting so dejected. So they start being really silly when I go from person to person and ask them. And so they put duct tape over their mouth, but they're really humorous about it. And they'll do like a little dance, or they'll like lock their mouth with a key and throw it away. So I start laughing. I'm like, okay, I get it. You're not supposed to tell me. That's for me to discover and learn. I'm only 36. I still have time to get this figured out and live my purpose. So at that point, Michael asks me, "What do you want to do?" All I could see, Maria, was our toddler's face, but it wasn't normal size. It was like bigger than an IMAX screen. It like filled my world around me. And she was just smiling, and she had these big hazel eyes and this adorable brown curly hair. And I could just see her smiling at me. And the decision at that point was easy. And I told Archangel Michael, put me back in, send me back, put me back in, coach. I'm ready to play. I'm going back for my children. I want to raise my children. I want to have this baby, and I want to raise my children. So everyone gives me one more group hug at that point, and they're like, "We're so proud of you. We love you. You can do it. Get back in there." And then Michael directs them to let go, because I need to get back. And he puts me back on the down escalator, and everyone's like in cheerleader mode and dancing around, and telling me that I can do it, and I'm so courageous, and they're so proud of me. And I just go back down the escalator, and it goes straight into my hospital room, and I see my body, and I just gently plop back into my body. And I kind of went, oh. And I had two thoughts the moment I'm back in my body. And the first was, dang, why is she so little? I was super annoyed.
Wow.
I'm 5'2", and I knew that like our souls are just there's just so much majesty and so much size to it. And I knew I only had a portion of my energy, and I had to like squeeze back into my body. So that didn't feel good. So that took me a minute to adjust to. And then I'm like, ugh, so much pain. And I checked the clock, and I'm like, okay, it's 5 p.m. I just need to make it until 7 a.m. tomorrow morning surgery. I can do this. And now I know, everything's going to be okay. So I had the surgery the next morning. They did it under imaging guidance to stay away from the fetus. And fortunately, I'm only 10 weeks. So of course, the
Yeah.
fetus is, tiny, tiny, tiny. And my OB told me what they discovered was it was my fundus had ruptured, FUNDUS, which is the aorta at the top of the uterus. So he estimated I had lost about 3/4 of my blood supply during that week, based on the amount of transfusing they had to do, because the aorta was just pumping it out. And that's why my abdomen had just distended so much. I looked like I was about 5 or 6 months pregnant when I, first went through this process and over those couple of days, and then that abated. So successful surgery, and I go back home to 6 weeks of strict bed rest. I couldn't have done anything else if I tried. I was just weaker than a kitten. And we were very fortunate that our wonderful nanny that we had was a live-in. And so she was taking care of me as well as our daughter, because my husband had to be at work.
Wow.
So I'll stop at that point. What questions do you have?
Wow, Wendy. What an incredible story. And I was writing down a couple notes as you were going through the story. And I I was impressed with because I've heard this before. I've heard about the light and I've also heard about the humor. And I
Hmm.
and I and I want to know um being in that space and experiencing that light
Hmm.
and also the humor within it, it's like not making things matter or so serious,
Hmm.
right? And because for me, with A Course in Miracles, it really helps us to actually make things lighter, to start seeing more
Yes.
from a perception of love than fear. I always say, don't make it too real. But I say, just have fun, go and do your manifestation, but don't make it too real. Adding that humor in there, I feel always helps people to kind of just relax and not make the world so real and having things need to happen a certain way and let go of control and manipulation. So I love that about the lightness and the humor because I feel and I want to see how it pertains to your life. Another thing that came to me in reference to we're not bodies. So you're like, I can totally see that that's not me. That's not what I am. That body from when you saw yourself from outside. And there's a great Course in Miracles workbook lesson that says, I am not a body, I am free. I am not a body, I'm free. And I saw that in that context as well. So, what's up with that humor? Why is the light so humorous? I have my ideas, but why is it so funny? Why is it so
I,
humorous? And why
I
the light, you
I
know?
feel it is because it's unconditional love. It's just joy. It's ease. There's flow. There's grace to it. And it's very expansive. So when we're feeling down, when we're feeling stressed, when we're feeling anxious, we just contract. We just get, smaller and smaller and smaller, and we're like seeing less and less opportunities, and we're just seeing, there's less gratitude, and we just have to, do our best to deal with reality. Because, yeah, sometimes things are challenging and we might have a relationship end that we really cared about. We might have a job go away, or a home go away, or our health leave us for a time period, and we're dealing with a serious health condition. But whatever we can do to just try and relax into it, which maybe correlates to what you're saying, don't make it too real, because you want to um, ask for what you need and then let it go. Don't be overly specific about it. Someone gave me this great um, analogy of when you're manifesting and you're asking your higher self, your guides, God, angels, whoever you relate to help you with something, to picture it being like going into a beautiful restaurant. You're going to a wonderful five-star restaurant for dinner, and you sit down and you read the menu and you pick exactly what you want, and it's going to be wonderful, and it's going to be so just a wonderful dining experience. And you give your order to the waiter or waitress, and then you just trust, they got it right. They might ask you a question or two and clarify.
Ooh.
And they go off and they put in the order. It's you putting out your order to the universe. And just trust, let it go. You did your part, and then just let it go and just feel the happiness and the humor and the excitement and the anticipation and the emotions of what it's going to be like to receive it, and just be in gratitude and feel that. Whereas if you were just having the ultimate control day and decide you don't trust that they got your order right, and you barge into the kitchen and you're like fussing with the chef and the sous chef, are you going to get your meal any faster or any better? I don't think so. You might even get removed from the restaurant.
That is such an excellent way to describe it. This is going to help so many people, Wendy. So I feel that so many of us caught up in, the Course of Miracles says this world is an illusion. So it's not, it's just something we're experiencing. So, but it feels very real. So our accomplishments feel very real, or what we want to attain, or exactly like what you said, we want to manifest, or things that we want to achieve or do in our life or live our purpose, whatever that is. And I went through that too, growing up, I had my passions and I had my goals. But what you're saying is just such a level of just, I love it because it makes it light. And there's this big, we go back to the word trust, right? This big sense of trust and letting go of control.
Mhm.
Now, the reason
Control's an illusion.
yes, and the reason it's so helpful is because, well, I'm okay with the word God. Anybody can supplement this word, but I'm okay with the word God and the word Holy Spirit. But we have this God complex, or this complex that we know better and want to manipulate and control. So when we make that order and we let it go, what we're saying is with all confidence, it's taken care of, and we're getting out of the way of this complex of thinking that we know what is the highest and best, because we don't know anything,
I
right?
I think we just need to trust that we're going to receive what we need, and that doesn't always match what we want, because want comes from the ego and that human persona. So we just need to just let it go and not be so specific, with the request.
Yeah, and then also not being so specific, it's like you're actually
Because
open up
more
to what
wonderful
is.
things can happen that you hadn't even thought of.
Yeah, what is like the best for you, for that soul, for that person. So that I feel is gonna, it's already taken, it feels like it's just takes a weight off everybody that right
Exactly.
now is listening to this, and it's maybe even listen to this right now while they're driving and they're just having a bad day because they didn't get that job promotion, or they're going through a divorce, or they're having a health issue, as you shared before. And listening to this, it's like it is happening for you, and it's
Yes.
the best thing. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard to say, because when you're going through it, it's hard. Even though what you've gone through is has been challenging, but love prevails, Wendy. I
Mhm.
don't know. Love prevails. The angels are there. That's something I want to get into. The angels, because not everyone, when they have NDEs, sees angels. That's it's not common. Not everyone sees angels. So I'm curious of how that has influenced your life. Which ones were they? I know I heard the name Archangel.
Angel Michael, I was able to identify, and the other four I couldn't name. It was just
Okay,
it was angels because they can be a collective.
okay,
It's kind of what their energy is. I mean, yes, there are a few specific named archangels, but that
okay.
that's how it appeared for me.
And after you had this experience, how do you live life now? In the sense of with having that incredible context, knowing that side, I'm sure it doesn't make it any easier because you're in a body now. I'm curious, that might be a little challenging. I mean, I think people would say that's amazing, but it might be challenging, or was challenging. Let
How
me,
do you reintegrate it into daily life?
yes.
So that's a great question, Maria. I didn't talk about it for about 20 years because again, this happened in 1997. I tried to share it with my husband, and I realized very quickly he was so traumatized. He was more traumatized by the events. Because put yourself in his shoes. He thought his wife might be dying. He might be losing a baby, and he might be raising an 18-month-old alone. So that was his perspective. So he didn't have the positives that I'd gone through. So he didn't want to talk about it. It just didn't fit belief systems, at that time. I tried to talk with my mother, and same thing. She just didn't know what to do with it. So I just zipped my lip at that point. The irony of that, because I lived in Seattle, as I mentioned, and IANS was there, the International Association for Near-Death Studies, the first chapter, and it's 40 plus year old group that helps people, it helps NDEers, it helps their loved ones. It helps people just make sense of this because it was difficult to integrate. So I would then go through some of the difficult churn that Michael had warned about. I returned to work after the 6 weeks, and job I loved. I'd been there for 3 years. I was the marketing director for a busy ambulatory surgery center. And I just didn't know what to say to coworkers. You're passing each other in the hall. Oh, Wendy, we're so glad you're back. Are you okay? What happened? Because I'd been out for 7 weeks at that point, and I just learned to say to people, I'm okay. Thank you for your concern. I held on to the pregnancy, was just bottom line of what I would say to people, and there just wasn't anything else I knew how to share or felt the need to share. So I'm back at work for about 6 weeks. It's now November of 1997. Get called into my boss's office on a Friday afternoon. I don't think a thing about it. I think he's just going to ask me to, do something he needs done the next week or to chat about our weekend. But the minute, Maria, I walk into his office, it's like, oh boy, I see weight of the world on his shoulders.
Mhm.
And I could see human resources sitting there with personnel file. I wasn't one step into the office. I knew what it was.
Wow.
I was laid off. And it was a very difficult, very challenging layoff because not only was it a job I loved in which we really needed and counted on that full-time income, I also carried the health insurance for the family. So now I'm pregnant in this high-risk pregnancy where I have to deliver in a hospital and we have no health insurance.
Wow.
So, oh, great. So that was really, really challenging. So I go home. I tell my family, my employer did everything they could, severance, and of course, go ahead and apply for unemployment, Wendy. Tell us what you need for references. But, not a great time to be interviewing, when you're visibly pregnant. And I still was, not back to my full health at that point. So I go home and update my family and say, okay, we're gonna have to tighten our belt. We had just purchased a new, larger home, expecting that second child, and also, and things had been going really well for years for us. So we were ready for that new home, and also had purchased a minivan again because of the second baby on the way. And so I apply for unemployment and just, start, tightening our belt and what do we have left on uh, credit cards and savings and what can I do? And I'm just trying to manage it while looking for a job. 1 week later, to the day, my husband is really late coming home from work. I was really worried because he wasn't answering his cell phone. He was about 3 hours late. So I was sitting like right by the front door when he walked in, and again, weight of the world on his shoulders. And I was like, are you okay? What's going on? I've been so worried. And he said, sit down. I need to tell you something really difficult. And the first thing he said was, I've just gone to payless paydays. Now it turns into a scene like from Charlie Brown. You know how like when the adults were talking, it was like rah, rah, rah.
Uh-huh.
I can't hear anything after payless paydays. I'm like, those two words don't go together. I don't get it. So he's trying to explain to me he had been one of five owners in a very successful software company. They employed about 100 people, a lovely office in downtown Bellevue on Seattle's east side, and they had gone belly up very quickly. Again, this was November of 1997, and we didn't know it was a deep recession was starting. So he's letting me know that he's going to be at work very long hours because they've got to figure out, what do we do about this lease? We've got to get everybody approved for unemployment. We've got to write references for everybody. And he's going to be programming because there's no programmers left. And I'm like looking at him going, oh my God, this is a big deal. And I tried to find my empathy because it's one thing to be laid off from a job you love and that you count on, but it's another, to lose your own company that he had put everything into for years. So I told him, I said, okay, we're going to figure it out. Just take the weekend. We'll figure it out. Let's just work.
Wendy, I'm assuming that the reason for this story is because you're being pushed to your true purpose,
Yes,
right? That's what I'm thinking. You're all
exactly.
orchestrating, so you go towards that purpose that you had seen on the other side. Anyways, that's what I was. Yeah.
Exactly. It took a while to get there. It took years, but you're right. This is a building block to getting there. So he does not qualify for unemployment. He'd been self-employed, so we're down to literally just my unemployment. Thankfully, financially, we were saved by Bank of Mom. My mom stepped to the plate and she made up the shortfall each month until he got back to work. All the astrology must have shifted because I was due March 13th, 1998, and I was actually induced on my delivery day. And healthy baby girl is born on a Friday. And fortunately, Maria, one of the big changes for me from having seen the angels was and had those experiences with them was I discovered from time to time I would hear them again. And it was very specific and precise. So, here we were, really about to lose everything until till mom stepped in and didn't have health insurance. And I was at the pediatrician's office one day with our toddler, and I was probably about 5 months pregnant at that point. And all of a sudden, I hear Michael say, "Look, look." And I could see this lamp getting brighter and brighter on this little side table in the pediatrician's office. I could see a brochure in front of it. And so I was like, oh, wow. And I knew no one else could see it. So it's like, oh, you want me to get that brochure? So I, grab my daughter and run over and get it and stuff it in the diaper bag to read at home. And what it was an application for WIC, women, infants, and children. And I didn't know what that was. I mean, I'd been trying to get us help, but nothing, there was no financial aid we were qualifying for because we're wealthy, because we own a home and own two cars, all of which we're about to lose. But that application got us health insurance for my delivery, and it also got us some healthy food, which frankly we really needed. So was so grateful, to hear Michael so clearly with that assistance. And then so I'm approved for what they now call a drive-through delivery, a very short stay. I'm approved for a 24-hour stay, including the labor. So I'm wheeled out the next morning, and I'm like, my head is just spinning. So glad our healthy daughter has been born, and so grateful. But things are going very quickly again. So I'm at home, and I'm in the bedroom, master bedroom by myself, nursing the baby, and Archangel Michael comes in, and I'm just like so relieved, exhausted, all the emotions. And I'm holding the baby, and Archangel Michael comes in, and he says, quite conversationally, "Your contract with your husband is complete."
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, unladylike words.
Wow.
Not my finest. I almost dropped the baby. I was so shocked. And then I was like, well, wait a minute, let's clarify. Maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. And so I just looked at him and I said, "Are you saying my marriage is over?" And he said, "Yes, your contract with your husband is complete." I'm like, wow, this is really big information. The human part of me didn't want to hear it, but I knew it was true. I knew it was correct. So my husband and I, we did our very best to be great parents, to be respectful, kind, loving to one another. But when it's done, it's done. And we chose to wait until our daughters were both in school full time. And then at that point, we divorced very peacefully, and we went to a 50-50 schedule. So as you said, the wheel just kept turning of trying to get me to my purpose, get me to my purpose, get me to my purpose. So the next big thing that happens was I just needed to rebuild my life after the divorce. I was very focused on the girls, focused on my career because needed to, make enough for the three of us, and just doing everything I can for my daughters. I had no interest in dating for about 6 or 7 years. Wasn't even on my radar. Just wanted to take care of the two little girls. So things were going really well by the time they were 12 and 14. And at that point, it was like all of a sudden, my career was going well, daughters are doing great. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh, something's missing. Oh, something's going to happen. Whoa, what's going on? And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, wow, I'm ready to meet a great guy. And it just was such a surprise. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. I haven't done that in 25 years. How do you do that nowadays? So I asked younger girlfriends who were actively dating or who had, were engaged or remarried. And I was like, how'd you meet your great guy? And they're like, oh, Wendy. So several of them said to me, and this was at that time, 2010. And several of them said to me, oh, Wendy, that's easy. You just need to go on Match.com. And I'm like, Match. What? What are you saying to me? I didn't know what online dating was. So they were naming an online dating service. They're like, oh, well, we'll help you. You just have to put together a profile. We need to get some good pictures of you, and we'll help you. So we did that, and then the minute I changed the radius, because you put in, distance you're willing to be from the person that you want to be matched with, the minute I put in 10 miles, Maria, this profile came up and I couldn't look away from the screen. And I'm like, what's going on? I know
Wow.
this man. I need to meet this man. This is really important. And I was reading through his profile, and nothing in it was predictable or trite. And it was really well written and unusually detailed. And I later find out he's a writer, which made sense. The very last sentence in it is, any woman on a spiritual path, particularly one interested in an LBL, we have to meet. And I'm like, LBL, what's an LBL? So I choose to Google, but at that point I knew how to communicate with my guides at that point. And I was
Oh,
like,
okay.
show me the right reference, because there might be many things that stands for. Show me the right reference. I immediately found Life Between Lives, which was a spiritual regression technique developed by Dr. Michael Newton, who wrote Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. And I'm reading it and I'm looking at his website and I'm reading about the Newton Institute. And I'm like, I've got to read this book. And it talked about past life regression and forgiveness and the soul's journey. And I'm like, this is it. This is it. This is it. So I ordered the book from the library, and then I jump back onto Match and I write to this gentleman and I said, where do I know you from? And are you talking about Michael Newton, Journey of Souls, Past Life Regression, and Life Between Lives? And he writes back immediately and says, yes. Have you had any of those sessions? Is that important to you? What do you think? Are you on a spiritual path? We have to meet. And I was like, yes. So it takes us 3 weeks to meet in person. And we're playing How Do I Know You the whole time, via email and, and text. And like, how do I know you? So I'm sitting in the restaurant. We agreed to meet for lunch on a weekday. And I got there first, and I'm sitting in the foyer. And the minute he walked in, I thought the earth was moving. It was Seattle. I was like, oh my gosh, we're having an earthquake. I could hear my guides saying, get ready, pay attention. Life is never going to be the same. And he walked in, and I'm just sitting there and I'm just gobsmacked. I couldn't even stand up. And he just dropped down on his knee in front of me, and he's just looking at my face and my eyes. And he says, I know you. And so he helped me up, and I'm like, okay, shake it off, act normal, go in and have lunch and figure out how you know each other. So we then finish each other's sentences for the next 3 hours and like are sharing. There's this feeling of, I've got to catch up. I've got it. When you meet a soulmate, that is what it's like. It's like, there you are. I've been looking for you. I know you. I remember you. And this is going to be important.
Wow.
So that was my spiritual awakening, because at the end of lunch, we both said the same thing. I don't know you from this lifetime. We've been through everything and everywhere we've been and done and who we know. And it's from past lives. And that was kind of shocking to me to hear that like coming out of my mouth and he was saying it at the same time. So
That
we
was that was 20 years because that happened in the 90s, the NDE, and then it would be 20 years later, right? Over 20 years later.
Yes,
Okay.
so it was just there was a big amount of time because the NDEs were in 1997 and then I meet this soulmate in 2010. So
Okay.
it's 13 years later.
Mhm.
And I was so fortunate to be able to learn how to discern what soul contracts are. And when you've got a lot of energy with someone, it might be wonderful, it might be delightful, it might be challenging. It can be very useful to meditate and ask, may I know what my soul contract is with this person? What are we meant to learn from each other, teach each other? What are we working on together? I would learn that my soul contract with my former husband, who I was with for 18 years, was to have a long-term marriage that we would both grow from and to have beautiful children together. And I
Mhm.
could see the plural underlined 3 times. I'm like, oh, that's why Michael told me reminded me of the fact your contract with your husband is complete once I had the second baby, children. And I would learn that my soul contract with this gentleman that I met via match, who would become a really important soulmate and boyfriend and so much more. What I learned was he had the contract to wake me up spiritually and to help get me on my life path. So that then starts to really get into gear. Because as I said, my daughters were 12 and 14, and things were just really going well in life. So I had the time then to really, really wake up spiritually. I read hundreds of books, listened to hundreds of podcasts once that became more of a thing, just dived into the deep end of the pool. And I knew I was meant to go for a past life regression. I knew I was meant to go for a life between lives. So my boyfriend that I met via match, he found the perfect hypnotherapist for me. He actually drove me to my first sessions. And I had that first past life regression in 2011. It was a game changer, Maria, because I let go of anxiety. I'd had anxiety my entire lifetime. And to be there as a 50-year-old and to say sayonara to it, it was
Wow.
so liberating. I felt so much more joyful, so much more free. I felt like the perfectionism came off me. It really, really was a game changer in just 2 hours. You know,
Wow. That's good.
have
Is everybody listening? Because maybe you should look for someone to do a past life regression. I didn't know that it can be so life-changing like that.
Yes, absolutely. It's why I became a past life regressionist myself. So I had that session, and then a year later I had my first Life Between Lives session. And that session was incredible because a 4 hour, very deep level of relaxation and hypnosis. And you are talking with your higher self and your soul the whole time. You're talking with guides, angels, God, whoever you relate to and want to bring in, and the wisdom that comes in and the remembrances that come in. Because we've got all this information, but we've got that veil of amnesia. So it's just removing what's appropriate, because if things are in the way of your purpose, and you need to remember things and heal from things and release them. So I transcribed the Life Between Lives session that I had in 2012, 65 pages of information when I typed it all up that I hadn't known. So it's like, okay, now I'm getting like the blueprint to my life and what it's meant to be and what I'm here for and how I can help others and how it all starts together and why I had to go through certain things. It just,
Wow.
made so much more sense. I then, over the next 2 years, I had 3 quantum healing hypnotherapy sessions with Dolores Cannon hypnotherapist, and those were incredible. Those were game changers. And at the end of the third one, the hypnotherapist, she was just chuckling, and she said to me, "You have to listen to your recording really closely because it's hysterical." She says, "I've never experienced this with anyone." She said, "You're not only completely fluent speaking as your higher self and as your guides," she said, "but you're telling me what to do as the hypnotherapist. And I'm a PhD and I've done
Wow.
hundreds of these sessions. And you're like, no, work with her more on this. She needs more of that. We need to release that. Oh, go back to that. Oh, that doesn't matter. Let that go." She's like, she's like, "You've clearly done this work. You're
Wow.
as the healer, as the spiritual teacher, you've done this work before. Have you considered training for this?" And I'm like, "Well, you're right. Now that you say that, and this is such a game changer. I'd love to help other people via this really powerful modality called past life regression and energy healing." So that's how it came about to get me to my purpose.
Wow. Yeah, when I was speaking, I was thinking, I would love, thank you first, thank you for sharing your life with us and everything that transpired and very authentically and sharing just very intimately everything that had happened. You know, it's a very personal thing. And I love that you're sharing it because you can just see with your story of how everything was being put together for
Your
this
building blocks.
for this moment. And I was a little bit blown away, and we'll start wrapping it up now, but I was really blown away because my life started to make sense of some of the things that happened to me with your story. And how intuitive we are, or how we receive information, but we pass it off like it's nothing, or, oh, that's just my head talking. And what hit me right now was my first marriage ended in divorce in 2009. And we were struggling so much. And it was just this whole struggle. And I was getting ready. I was acting at the time and I was putting on my makeup in the bathroom. And I heard this voice say, "That's it." And I always say that, but I never say it like I'm saying it now with the understanding that you just said. Now I get it. What was that voice? It was so strong, like, "That's it. We're done. We're done here." Something like that. And I was like, and my body just started walking down the stairs. And that's when I asked my husband for the divorce. I was like, "Okay, that's it. I think we've reached the limit." Or I don't know what I said. But what that reminds me is just we're constantly, we are being directed. We are being guided. Another thing that happened is that when I before I met my second husband, I received information from someone that came to see me at the church I was speaking at, and she said to me, "You will meet she said to me, I don't know if you believe this or not, but you will meet the person that you're supposed to be with." I'm getting goosebumps. And she says, "It's going to be attached to your book, which is Live Your Happy. You're going to meet him for that." Through that, I thought I was going to meet this distinguished man with, a suit at some bookstore and Barnes and Nobles. I don't know. I had this vision. And you're going to meet him through your book. And you will, when you meet him, you will recognize him because you guys are already communicating. And I was like, it blew my mind. But now what you're saying, everything was guiding me, even not even, but for me to also feel comfortable with this situation by receiving it the way I received it. So hence, I'll make a long story short. I was speaking at a retreat. He was volunteering. When I saw him, I recognized him. He was not the business guy I thought. He had long hair with a bun, and he was 15 years younger than me, but I recognized him and I was like, this is it. I don't know. And he felt the same way. And, now we're married and we have, a 6-year-old. But I'm telling you, Wendy, now I get it. Everything is,
Soul recognition.
and I had never heard it till right now that you told me.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
incredible. It's incredible.
Yes, exactly. Because just the soul knows, and we're so loved and supported. But sometimes we just have to get out of our own way because we can just be creating so much anxiety and resistance and just not wanting to, take a new step or let go of something because of fear. And we're just really meant to open our hearts because we
Yeah.
know the antidote to fear, it's love. So,
Hmm.
and that's what we need to do. It's like, okay, what would be the most loving thing I can do right now for others, for myself, for the situation, for the planet, whatever the applicable question is, and just do your best to choose that.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that you said that because that's a very practical way to live it. And I think that if most of us live without that resistance, it would be easier because I could have said, oh no, this is not it, or this is too fast, or this is not the person. It doesn't look like the way I thought it would.
Surprising.
Yeah, yeah, right. And then it's like, well, it's too fast, or it shouldn't be this way. And I didn't do that. I was like, this makes absolutely no sense, but it feels right. And I'm just going to trust and see the word trust again. I'm just gonna see how this develops. And I have to say, when
Yes.
I met him February 2017, and February 20, it was a Valentine's, around Valentine's, and we got engaged in April. We got married in May and we were pregnant in July. And I was 40. I was 40 years old. I always wanted to have a baby. I had one ectopic pregnancy. I can relate to you. I only
Mhm.
had one foot, one tube, and I carried my baby healthy. I had him at 41, my baby Ari, and all because I'm getting goosebumps because I had that trust.
Yeah,
And also if I didn't have that, I was okay too. I didn't have attachments. I wanted what God wanted for me. I get tears just saying that, but
that's such a brilliant point. And yes, just a lot of trust in that. Yes.
and then your story has helped me so much. I didn't think that this was going to happen on this episode, but it's helped me make sense of so many things and given me a lot of comfort. Because sometimes you think life is life and that's normal, or that wasn't, but I'm blown away. So thanks,
Oh, I'm so
Wendy.
happy to hear that. But I think that was really one of the important things I learned is we're just so loved and supported and just need to, just do our best to go with the flow and just let the good things come in.
Yes, and you don't know how amazing it could be, so much more than our limited
Yes,
mind thinks.
yes, yes, exactly,
All
exactly.
right, everyone. Well, Wendy, it's been an honor, and it's wendyrosewilliams.com. Wendy has written 3 books. She's going to show them on screen now for us if she can, so we can
Sure. Here's
have a
the most
look.
recent one, which is Regression Healing to Joe and Marilyn, but they're all linked on my website as well as how to work together one-on-one. And I also do some fun group sessions for people and help people understand that past life energy and release it. I also channel the ascended masters and angels. So you'll find different things on the website, as well as the link to my podcast, which is wakingupspiritually.com.
Wonderful. I'll put also link that up here in the description and also on the podcast platforms. Thanks, Wendy. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. This was so much, it was so wonderful to speak with you and just hear these connections, Maria. You gave me a lot to think about. So thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. All right, everyone. If you love that episode, make sure you like and subscribe here on the YouTube channel as well as on the podcast. Share this with your friends. You never know what life this might change with the conversation that Wendy just had. Bye, everyone. And remember to trust. That was a big word here. Trust to the max. Till next time. Bye bye.